Michael Jackson insisted Billie Jean was never a confession, yet tabloids turned a warning about obsessive fans into a global scandal, spawning rumors that still haunt his legacy. Behind the lyrics lies a real nightmare: credible threats, manipulated narratives, and a myth so powerful it overpowered the truth. What if everything you know about the song's origins is wrong? The real story begins here. Michael Jackson's earliest memories of fame were tangled with adoration and anxiety. Touring with the Jackson 5 as a teenager, he watched as fans pushed past velvet ropes and security lines, desperate for a moment of connection. Some slipped backstage, clutching photographs or letters. Others claimed they carried a Jackson child, stories that followed the brothers from city to city. In his 1988 autobiography, Michael wrote that there never was a real Billie Jean. He described how, after concerts, women would approach him or his brothers insisting that their children belonged to one of them. The accusations were relentless, sometimes arriving as handwritten notes, other times as public confrontations in hotel lobbies or by the pool. These encounters blurred the line between admiration and obsession. Michael could never understand how strangers could invent entire relationships or why they clung so tightly to their stories. The groupie culture of the 1970s and the early 1980s thrived on fantasy, but for the Jacksons, the consequences were real. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by tabloids eager for scandal. Each new city brought fresh claims. Some whispered, others shouted. Michael watched as his brothers endured questions and doubts, their private lives dissected in public. By the time he sat down to write Billie Jean, these experiences had accumulated 1,000 faces, 100 stories, none of them quite true. The character in the song was not a single person, but a reflection of the pressures that came with fame. Michael's lyrics became a shield, a way to warn others about the dangers of believing every story. The refrain, "The kid is not my son," echoed the denials he and his brothers had repeated for years. For Michael, Billie Jean was never about confession. It was about survival in a world where fantasy and reality collided every night on tour. In 1981, a package arrived at the Jackson family home. Inside, Michael found a photograph of a woman he had never met, a handgun, and a letter. The message was chilling. She claimed he was the father of her twins, demanded that he die at a specific time, and promised to end her own life, along with the life of her child, so they could all be together in the next world. Michael had received strange letters before, but nothing like this. The threat was real enough to haunt him. According to biographer J. Randy Taraborelli, the incident left Michael shaken, plagued by nightmares, and afraid the woman might appear in person. He hid her photograph away, not wanting to tempt fate or encourage copycats. No police reports or official documents ever surfaced about the package. The woman's name was never made public, and Michael refused to speak about the details even to close friends. The Jacksons later learned she had been institutionalized, but the fear lingered. For Michael, fame had always come with a cost, but this was different. The boundary between fan and stalker had vanished. The experience deepened his sense of vulnerability. He became more guarded, more wary of strangers who claimed to know him. The story never made headlines, but it changed the way Michael saw the world. Every letter, every knock at the door carried the possibility of danger. The incident lived in the shadows, feeding the anxiety that would shape his music and his life. When he wrote about obsession and denial, it was not just a story. He was drawing from a place of real fear. The myth of Billie Jean would grow, but for Michael, the threat was never just a rumor. It was a risk he carried long after the package had disappeared. Pop music often blurs the line between reality and storytelling. In songwriting, it is common for artists to write in the first person, slipping into the voice of a character or narrator who is not meant to be themselves. This approach lets songwriters explore situations, feelings, and conflicts that might have nothing to do with their own lives. Sometimes the narrator is a stand-in for a friend, a stranger, or even a pure invention, someone who exists only within the song's world. Listeners, though, are quick to assume the words belong to the singer, especially when the lyrics sound confessional or dramatic. Classic examples fill the charts. Dolly Parton's Jolene pleads with a rival, but the story is not drawn from her own marriage. In Eleanor Rigby, the Beatles created entire lives for fictional characters, using first-person details that felt intimate and true. Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run and Adele's Someone Like You both use personal pronouns, yet their stories are shaped by imagination as much as memory. The technique is so familiar that most people do not question it until a song's story hits close to home or stirs up controversy. For Michael Jackson, writing Billie Jean in the first person was a way to dramatize a warning, not to confess a secret. The lyrics build a narrative voice, someone under siege by rumor and accusation. This narrator is a dramatic tool, shaped by the conventions of pop songwriting, not a direct window into Jackson's private life. Understanding this difference is key to separating fact from myth as the story of Billie Jean unfolds. Listeners often hear what they expect, especially when a song hints at real-life drama. In the case of Billie Jean, the urgency in Michael Jackson's delivery, tense, breathless, almost pleading, triggers a sense of confession. The first-person lyrics combined with a driving bass line and sharp percussion create a feeling of direct experience, but the mind plays tricks. When a story sounds personal, people naturally connect it to the singer, searching for hidden truths in every word. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Once a rumor takes hold, every detail seems to support it. A lyric about denial becomes proof of guilt. A warning turns into a secret admission. The more listeners believe they're hearing a real confession, the more they ignore evidence to the contrary. Even when Michael insisted the song was fiction, the myth grew stronger. Tabloids and radio DJs added fuel, repeating the idea that Billie Jean was a true story. Fans pored over interviews and album notes, convinced there must be a real Billie Jean somewhere in Michael's past. The line between character and creator faded, and speculation became accepted fact. In this way, the psychology of listening helped transform a cautionary tale into a lasting legend, blurring art and autobiography for millions around the world. Tabloid editors watched Michael Jackson's star rise, and they saw an opportunity. By early 1983, headlines began to appear with Jackson's name in bold print, pairing Billie Jean with rumors of real-life scandal. One weekly ran the phrase, "The truth behind Billie Jean, is Michael hiding a secret?" A few months later, another tabloid splashed, "Who is the real Billie Jean? Paternity claims rock pop's king." The stories multiplied as Thriller dominated the charts. Some magazines quoted supposed insiders, others relied on anonymous sources, but the message was always the same: the song must be a confession. Circulation numbers soared. By mid-1983, supermarket racks were crowded with covers linking Jackson to love affairs, secret children, and mysterious women. Radio DJs joined in, teasing listeners with questions about the song's meaning, while talk shows filled airtime with speculation. By 1984, even mainstream outlets were running features tracing every rumor, no matter how thin. The narrative snowballed, picking up new details with every retelling. Some reports recycled old groupie stories from Jackson 5 Days, others invented new ones, each headline louder than the last. Between 1983 and 1985, the volume of coverage exploded, with dozens of papers and magazines running weekly updates. The media did not just report on the rumors, they fueled them, turning a single song into an ongoing public mystery. For Michael Jackson, the tabloid frenzy became impossible to ignore. Each headline blurred the line between art and accusation, feeding a cycle that would only grow more intense with time. In 1986, a woman named LaVon Powless stepped into the spotlight with a claim that echoed the rumors swirling around Michael Jackson for years. Powless filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles, insisting that Jackson was the father of her child. She called herself the real Billie Jean, borrowing the name straight from the headlines and the song that had become a magnet for public speculation. The case caught the attention of tabloids already hungry for any story linking Jackson's lyrics to real life. Paulus used the courts as her stage, repeating the same accusations that had followed Jackson since his earliest days with the Jackson Five. She submitted handwritten notes, offered no credible evidence, and cited the song's lyrics as proof. The legal system, however, demanded more than rumor and coincidence. The judge dismissed her case for lack of evidence. The story faded from the news, but the damage was done. For weeks, her name appeared alongside Jackson's in gossip columns and court dockets, feeding the idea that every line in Billie Jean hid a secret. Paulus was not alone. Her actions reflected a larger pattern, individuals hoping to turn media fantasy into personal gain. The myth had become so powerful that it inspired real people to step forward, hoping to find truth in fiction or at least a moment in the spotlight. Each new claim made it harder for Jackson to separate his art from the stories others wanted to tell about him. The cycle of accusation and denial played out in public, fueled by headlines and courtroom drama, with Billie Jean at its center. Inside Westlake's studio in Los Angeles, the atmosphere crackled with creative tension. Michael Jackson arrived with a groove in his head and a clear vision. He wanted a song that felt like obsession, a bass line that would not let go. Louis Johnson, known for his work with the Brothers Johnson, picked up his Music Man Stingray and started working through ideas. The riff that emerged was lean and hypnotic, pulsing with a sense of urgency. Michael insisted on building the track around this line, demanding that nothing distract from its drive. Quincy Jones, the producer, pushed for changes. He worried about confusion with tennis star Billie Jean King and suggested the title be changed to Not My Lover. Michael refused. He argued that the name was essential and so was the song's length. Quincy wanted it trimmed, and Michael fought for every second. The clash stretched for days, with neither side willing to give ground. In the end, Michael's instincts won out. Bruce Swedian, the engineer, brought his own ideas to the mix. He used heavy compression on the bass and drums, running them through custom-built equipment to create a tight, punchy sound. Swedian called it smelly jelly, a trick that made the rhythm feel almost physical. Greg Fillinganes added keyboard flourishes that shimmered just beneath the surface, giving the track a sense of unease. Every choice in the studio was deliberate, designed to keep listeners on edge and to echo the paranoia at the heart of the lyrics. The result was a song that sounded like no other, restless, relentless, impossible to ignore. When Billie Jean hit the airwaves in early 1983, its impact reached far beyond radio. Steve Barron's music video with its glowing sidewalk and noir-inspired visuals arrived just as the MTV was beginning to shape a new era of pop culture. At the time, the MTV playlist was dominated by white rock acts, with black artists rarely granted prime exposure. That changed when CBS Records pressed the network to add Billie Jean to heavy rotation, threatening to pull all their artists if the MTV refused. Executives relented, and the video aired day and night. For the first time, a black solo artist's video became a breakthrough on the channel, opening doors for others and transforming the MTV lineup almost overnight. As the video played across the country, Billie Jean shot up the Billboard Hot 100. By March 5th, 1983, it had reached #1, holding the top spot for 7 weeks. The song's hypnotic groove and mysterious storytelling turned it into a phenomenon, but the video's constant presence on television gave the myth a global stage. Viewers from New York to Tokyo watched Michael glide across illuminated tiles, his every move dissected and imitated. The combination of relentless airplay and chart dominance made Billie Jean more than a hit. It became a cultural event, fueling speculation and rumor on a scale that no single interview or tabloid story could match. With the MTV as its amplifier, the legend of Billie Jean spread worldwide, ensuring that its mysteries and myths would echo far beyond the music itself. March 25th, 1983. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium buzzed with anticipation as the Motown 25 special, Yesterday, Today, Forever, brought together legends for a single night. Michael Jackson took the stage in a black sequined jacket and a single white glove, his fedora pulled low. The opening notes of Billie Jean sent a ripple through the crowd. Every move was calculated, snapping the brim of his hat, spinning on his heels, pausing just long enough to build suspense. Then, with a single glide backward, he introduced the moonwalk to a national audience. The auditorium erupted. In that instant, the performance became more than just a song, it was a spectacle, a moment that burned itself into pop culture memory. People who watched live still remember the shock. There was no warning, no explanation, just a new way of moving that seemed to defy gravity. The audience's cheers grew louder with every step. Even industry veterans backstage stood in disbelief, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads. The moonwalk wasn't rehearsed for the cameras. Michael had practiced it in his kitchen, determined to get it right. After Motown 25 aired, the world saw Michael Jackson in a new light. Billie Jean was no longer just a hit single, it was the soundtrack to a visual revolution. The moonwalk became a symbol, replayed in news clips and parodied on late-night TV. Years later, fans and critics would point to that night as the moment Michael Jackson became a true icon, his image forever linked to a single electrifying performance. Decades later, Billie Jean still fuels speculation, proof that myth can outlast even the clearest intent. In an era where rumors spread faster than facts, the line between artist and invention blurs with every headline. The real story is not just about what Michael Jackson meant, it is about how we choose to listen. What is your take? Join the conversation below.